Sorry, I forgot a couple things that are worth more context. These are not the only negative things that secondhand marijuana setting off my schizophrenia has caused. Well, in this case, it was the first-hand marijuana with the self-electrocution, but the Strawberry Festival Vac on Island incident of 2009 was secondhand. In 2018, just before COVID, no, it was during COVID, or was it before COVID? In Albuquerque, secondhand weed smoke came from the neighbors, and it sent me into such a severe psychosis that my landlord showed up, and I took a baseball bat to my landlord's head for no reason at all. And the voices in my head, it was actually kind of fucked up. Like, I was watching this anime about samurais in ancient Japan, and I mimicked the move to make a slice just above the eye. So in my psychosis from secondhand marijuana, I broke the tip of the baseball bat, so it was sharp, splintered edges, and I brought it up and down, just like the samurai in the cartoon, and sliced right above his eye to cause blood to blind one of his eyes, right? Blood bleeds into the eye. And he had to go to the hospital and got 7 stitches or something. Nobody ever filed charges. I have no idea why. It's weird. I try to prevent stuff like that by identifying the cause, secondhand marijuana, and then trying to eliminate it in my environment. Instead, because billionaires like Elon Musk and, the international globalist bankers, the Epstein client list, are using marijuana to demographically change America religiously, culturally, ethnically, etc., right? Marijuana is lubricant for a globalist agenda. It's just increasing in my environment. And another aspect of that is social media. When I do this counter marijuana propaganda campaign, I get shadow banned, directly banned, silenced, censored, etc. like crazy. I literally been kicked off so many social media sites, had so many accounts shut down, just for opposing marijuana. Now, there's other things that I do that are absolutely a violation of the terms of service, but for some reason, opposing marijuana is somehow worth censoring, and that's because drug dealers are not objective and moral, but somehow they control the censorship. Or the government is protecting and helping the drug dealers, which is weird, because I thought both church and state were supposed to protect people from drug dealers, not help the drug dealers and become the drug dealers. So in 2019, after the baseball bat incident, I tried to get a job down the street at this, old folks rest home, and the criminal background made them not hire me because they couldn't tell if it was a misdemeanor or a felony. It was a misdemeanor. That I never should have got. It's so retarded, all this. Anyway, all this could have been prevented with people just being honest about the fact that I had schizophrenia, and marijuana sets it off, including secondhand. I sought help for my mental illness from Greg Thompson of Vashon Youth and Family Services. That is all on their records. I guarantee it. They deprived me of help deliberately because drug dealers, my theory at least, have more power and control of that island and its power structure because they have money, and so economic power is, political power, than the actual government. After that, I ended up at that Anglican church in the South Valley, where I saw a so-called Christian dealing weed inside the church during service. So I couldn't find a marijuana-free community or society in the Puget Sound because, my thinking was white people without Christianity are immoral and they're pagan and they're essentially, atheist, but a hypersexualized hookup culture of drug abuse and addiction, very, very pagan. And so therefore whites with Christianity over here on the East Coast, North Carolina, Virginia, would therefore be the opposite. drug-free and sexually moral and all that stuff. Yeah. Nope. It's fucking wild. And this whole time, I've been doing everything on my end, in my inner locus of control, to prevent bad things from happening, avoid problems, and improve my life, and do the right thing. And I'm being punished by a corrupt society for doing the right thing, for making the right choices. It's fucking insane. Another couple points, concise caveats. The whole thing about this, right? When I point out to Christians that elites, the Jews, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, whoever it is, the deep state, the banks that control the deep state, whatever, are replacing white Christians in their own white Christian nation via marijuana, drugs, and porn, are assisting the Great Replacement, population reduction from the 1960s to 2010s, 2020s, and population replacement via immigration. Most of them are fine with that. The attitude is good. Jesus hates white people, kind of a weird, brainwashed via social media thing. And that's literally been the message from Liberty University. The first semester that I took there, they had me enrolled in an anthropology course, and it was very specifically anti-white from white Christians. Very specific, very specifically worded white man bad type content, saying, oh, well, if you're European, you have privilege and inherit bigotry, and Christians should never come off as though Christianity is a correct perspective because that is offensive to non-Christians. And it's weird. So they are all about fucking over Americans for immigrants. It's the brainwashed, we were the children of Israel in Egypt, and so therefore fuck white people kind of like mentality. Christian brainwashing. So absolutely communists and atheists can use Christianity to manipulate the global gloom, right? The moronic masses. And they do. It's my theory. I mean, the only other explanation is Christians are just self-hating. I'm white and therefore I hate myself. Kind of this weird white guilt thing. So to the white Christians watching this, you were not the children of Israel. You were never in Egypt as slaves, and you're not even translating that passage correctly. When it says what most Christians cite is be kind to the foreigner because you were once a foreigner in the land of Egypt or whatever. No, the word actually better translates as proselyte or convert. So this means someone who enters Israel, they should only show him the kindness they show fellow Israelis if he quits eating pork, gets the circumcision, and all the laws of Moses, right? If he converts to Judaism, essentially, then the in-group support applies to him. It's not just any outsider or foreigner. That's a deliberate deception through translation that the Christians do with the Hebrew text. Many such cases. Well, I recall being at Liberty at the student computer lab in the Jerry Falwell Library, and there was a woman, beautiful young woman, Korean immigrant. And well, Trump had just been put in the White House by the Jews for the second time. And when I asked her where she was from and assessed that she was an immigrant, I could read her face. She experienced a moment of fear that she's going to be deported. But she also conveyed this awareness in her mind that through her facial expressions, she conveyed these thoughts unintentionally. She broadcasted what she was thinking without even trying or being aware or able to hide it. she was aware that she was totally okay with fucking over an American for her place in the school. And that she was stealing food from an American-born person's mouth. She was stealing an American-born person's seat at the school. That scholarship could have gone to an American citizen. Instead, it was going to her, the immigrant. And it's very game theory, right? She, as a Christian, is totally okay with fucking over Americans for personal gain. So Christians are all about this. When I look at this town that I'm in my roommates, it's a good example of what's happening to America, like a microcosm, macrocosm. This was once a majority white Christian town, and now you're getting a lot of ethnic diversity, a lot of increase of drug use, drug overdose deaths, violent crimes, connected to marijuana legalization, etc. They don't care. They're all about it because the money is good, right? And so as Christians, the more we're going to start as money. That's definitely an interesting observation in itself. And because they're manipulated by money, right, they're okay with being demographically replaced because marijuana makes, them like psychologically neutered or handicapped or something, so they can't even stop this immigration, this ethnic demographic replacement, cultural, genocide of white Christian America. And there's only two explanations there. Either they're the victim of psychological warfare and brainwashing, or they're intelligent and they know exactly what's going on and they're participating in it. The white man is participating in his own decline and destruction, willingly, by choice. And everything the white supremacists blame the Jews are actually the consequences of the white man's actions, right? Everything they blame the Jews on and scapegoat the Jews. I find that rather interesting. It's pretty wild stuff. Well, while all this is going on, I had a little freak out a little bit, but I was actually surprisingly able to stay calmer than normal. But I thought, well, where would I go if I could move out of here to get away from the drugs, right? Because everyone's a bunch of fucking drug addicts. The white Christians are all on drugs, and alcohol is a drug, etc. Well, I contacted my dad because he started contacting me recently. I think he is feeling bad about the fact that he's going to die alone because he was such a bad father. So, and he's getting old. He's going to die probably soon. So I said, you live in this place that has a policy of no smoking or vaping anything because old people condo. Can I move in with you? Right. So my dad would be the one place that I can go to get away from the weed. And I also have an aunt who owns my grandfather's old house and rents a house. Now, those places could be my marijuana-free living situation. But based on the analysis of behavior patterns of my family throughout my life, I predicted my dad would not respond. Sure enough, he did not. So I can't even rely on my own family for any of this. I used to think that, well, maybe there's racial differences, genetic inferiority, and because my dad is mostly Native American, he was more influenced and, subverted by the brainwashing, drug, and porn propaganda of the drug and sex revolution of the 60s and 70s than white people were. And this explains why New Mexico fell quicker than Christian states that didn't, the last states to legalize or decriminalize marijuana, including the scam of medicinal marijuana, essentially. I think there is a lot of truth to that, but also, because the white Christians, they're definitely being harmed by their own greed. The marijuana is not just harmless to white people. It's causing a lot of problems. That's why Gavin Newsom tried to stop it. And these problems are tangible and observable even here, but I think the alcohol and the hemp frosting consumption of people like my roommates are preventing them from, you know, acquiring and maintaining an awareness of all these bad things that are happening to them and all around them, right? Numbs the pain, numbs into reality, etc. But to me, they're very visible. It's amazing what happens when you don't do drugs. Your senses get sharper, your memory gets better, cognitive functions improve. For example, after that time where there was a bunch of weed smoke in the house, well, the roommates had a cousin visiting from out of town. Well, a few days later, because they were here for a couple weeks, I heard my roommate's voice through the floor downstairs, other side of the house. I could, like, GPS locate based on the sound where it was within fractions of a second. And I distinctly heard the two voices say two sentences, and one was something along the lines of, you know, did you do it right, or something like that. And the guy said, yeah, I couldn't even smell it. So that makes me think it is very possible that the roommate's guests were smoking marijuana that night, but maybe not. I don't know. I know I definitely heard a loud, not that loud, but sort of loud bang on that side of the house, and I couldn't tell if it was inside the room or on the outside of the, you know, wall outside the house. But there's no one I can go and nowhere I can go and no one to turn to help. The brother who got me into this living situation, he has the same hemp's products in his fucking church that they have here with the frosting. So I don't think just because someone's white and Christian, that doesn't mean I can trust them. Liberty will watch this video. Who knows how many white Christians will see this video, and they'll do just like my dad. They won't help. They won't help me get away from marijuana. They will help me get away from the drugs. It's pretty wild. It's insane to me that I cannot find in this entire country, which my income level was likely a factor, any marijuana-free society, community, or life, or just a marijuana-free existence. Even though I should, in theory, have the right to just simply live not high. Instead, the government is saying, fuck your rights to live drug-free. And so are the people. So is the Christians and people outside of the government. You just have to deal with it. You just have to fucking cope. You're going to become high constantly against your will and without your consent via secondhand marijuana. And fuck you. That's fucking weird, isn't it? And my dad and my family do nothing to help. And this is part of a globalist agenda that is absolutely helping all these immigrants come in. And Liberty is a part of it, right? Liberty is absolutely all about the race mixing. Like, I found out apparently most of the universities out here had policies against interracial dating. And one lasted all the way until 2006 in South Carolina, until the feds said, well, we'll cut you off your tax exemption status unless you get rid of that, university policy ban on interracial dating. And so the guy announced it on Larry King Live. Globalist agendas, marijuana is a part of. And so, since Liberty University is run by the Epstein client list, just like all other universities, Christianity is not going to stop globalism. It's not going to stop children accessing porn on the internet. It's not going to stop marijuana legalization. It's not going to stop the drug overdose death rate of white Christians that's been happening and increasing over the last 30 years, especially after marijuana legalization, methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, cocaine, all the harder drugs increased with marijuana legalization. Christianity failed to stop the population reduction and replacement done by the globalists through drugs and pornography. Liberty University even had a thing where they called it Christian globalism. So, yeah. The church cannot resist the bankers. The church is controlled by the bankers, just like the state. And that's why I kept experiencing all this corruption in all these churches, which marijuana legalization is a red flag symptom of moral bankruptcy and corruption, of compromising values for profit. And all the churches have done it that I've attended. It's a very strange thing to me that white Christians can't be honest enough to say, okay, there's no legal or political way to stop these globalists. They control the government, the banks, etc. We have to take action. Somebody has to do something to stop this, to stop our kids from being corrupted with pornography and drugs and causing suicides and stuff like that through social media, technology, etc. No Christians are doing that. No white Christians. They're attacking abortion clinics occasionally, very, very rarely, but it happens. That doesn't actually stop the globalist agenda. It's kind of retarded. So it's blowing my mind that white Christians can be this dumb and gullible and dishonest and drugged out and alcoholic, etc. So it absolutely blows my mind that white Christians can be so gullible and easily programmed and manipulated with social media and media in general. For example, when I first moved in here and I trusted my roommates that this was going to be like a marijuana-free, therefore hemp-free living situation, the wife started to get really bitchy and argumentative. It's helped so many people and bad. But then they would also admit that I was right because they Googled it and apparently their Google doesn't have the psychological profile that mine does, so they actually got more honest and better results about fatalities caused by cannabis in various ways, like the, vehicular fatalities from stoned drivers and things like that. They actually got more deaths than what came up with my searches through Google. And they said, fuck the victims caused by the cannabis industry. The same as the automobile industry, like they justified it. And the wife even said, well, it's reducing the population, so good. But this is the same woman when I told them how Trump had lied and he'd actually been bought off by BlackRock, who had subsidiaries like Civicor and GeoGroup, or is it Civigroup? No, yeah, GeoGroup and Civicor, who contract through the government and make billions off of illegal immigration, detention, housing, community supervision, etc. She got really mad and said, he built a wall. So she lives in Virginia. She saw that he built the wall on the internet. I lived in New Mexico, where the southern border is. And I told her this, he didn't build the wall. And she got really mad at me, and then I had to point out, well, I actually lived there. I lived at the southern border. And so she was psychologically manipulated, programmed through TikTok, and just lied to. And apparently it's really easy to dupe white Christians, especially because the alcohol and the hemp and the weed and all the drugs they do make them more psychologically malleable. That's why globalists are using it to implement their agenda. Marijuana is a smaller part of a larger globalist plan. There was a point where white Christianity stopped that from happening, where Christians would have cared about the deaths caused by cannabis to realize that it does not outweigh the benefits, the costs, and this is tangibly true. So social media, the electronic media in general, made it much easier to manipulate and brainwash the global masses of white Christians and non-white Christians. This agenda isn't just negatively affecting white Christians, it's destroying all of America, thus transforming all of America, including the once mostly homogenous Spanish Catholic, New Mexico, Mexican Catholic. Now we're getting all kinds of diversity. White Christians were the Trojan horse for what the white supremacists call the Jewing, right? The Jews. White Christians were the one who bought in the drugs and the porn and, you know, the blacks and Arabs and etc. It's true. Even last night in Twitter space, I had a bunch of white Christians being very dumb and dishonest with me because I simply expressed truths about the harms of marijuana. So the fact that these people can be so easily brainwashed and believe lies that TikTok says or other social media, it makes me question about being a Christian, because my goals for pursuing Christianity are not aligning with the results of Christianity. For example, the Orthodox church that I'm attending, right? So when I had the wherewithal to be more atheist and guard the Christians from theft, which I think is kind of technically the Christian thing to do, the women who were married started finding me hot. And so these women were acting slutty in front of their husbands. Like, one girl rubbed her boob against my arm as I walked by, and she stopped and did it kind of like slowly. It's fucking gross. You're married. And another woman, right in front of her husband, is giving me the vibe, you know what I mean? Like, you know, with the boobs and everything. Aren't you supposed to be Christians? And the same thing happened in that Twitter space. The Christians post porn, they defended drugs, but then they also blamed the Jews for drugs and porn destroying white Christian America. It's pretty fucking retarded. One more observation. So the woman who rubbed her boob against me at the church Christmas party in front of her husband and kids, like she has kids with this guy, and she's still acting like a slut. Dirty slut. It might have been her purse that was open and near the door, because she's a moron, and the father, the priest, he's warned them repeatedly, don't leave your purses in the hall. We've had thefts. Someone had $50 stolen. Someone came in when no one was watching. So she might be sexually aroused by me because my male dominance and control saved her from her own stupidity. So therefore, women like men who are dominant and controlling because we save women from themselves, from their own stupidity. I see this connected to the Baptist Church, Faith Baptist Church. The reason they all worship Donald Trump is because they're relying on politicians to dominate and control them and save them from their own stupidity. It's the same dynamic. It's pretty hilarious. Externalizing accountability. Yeah. And that's hilarious in itself, because Christians, white Christians apparently cannot be sober, just incapable of living without drugs and porn, etc. But they blame the Jews for the drugs and the porn, and then attack me and call me a Jew for opposing drugs and porn, while the Jews call me a Nazi for the same thing. And Liberty Baptists that founded the place, they're so psychologically cuckolded by Christianity, they're too busy doing nigger worship of Martin Luther King, Murder Luther King. You know, that guy was a horrible piece of shit. He was a wife beater, he was a serial adulterer. He was present when a woman was raped, a white woman was raped by a black man, and he was giving advice and high-fiving. And this is like the George Floyd of the Baptists. Like, this is the hero. And so when I look at Lynchburg, it's like there's a huge black demographic here, and I know that was not the case 40 or 30 years ago. And so it's this weird psychological cuckolding of Christianity that is enabling the destruction of a white Christian America. It's being exploited by drug pushers and porn pushers and atheists or whoever it is that runs TikTok and Instagram and all the social media that's doing the social engineering, the psychological warfare and psychological manipulation of the masses through the media. And that got me questioning, because so the Orthodox Church is very similar to the Catholic Church. Kneel, stand, sign of the cross. So it's really easy to trick Christians into thinking I'm one of them, which I might be, but I might not be. I'm not really strongly grounded in any particular religion right now, given all the failures of members of those religions to just make their actions match their words. But yeah, it makes me question, because the white atheists in the Seattle area were just as brainwashed as the white Christians here. So are Christians more gullible and susceptible to brainwashing? Does it create a adaptive level of cognitive dissonance that apparently not all Christians have, but some Christians do? And just to really drive this point home, there's Bible passages that command against gullibility, including the New Testament, like Galatians and Matthew and stuff. So, to witness Christians being deceived by the Epstein client list, by TikTok, etc., and then attack me or, bitch at me or whatever for speaking the truth, it really, really shows me that stupidity is stupidity, and religion, or the lack of religion, cannot cure it. Or dishonesty. So just one more point. This right here I really want to focus on. The second incident caused by untreated mental illness that was being exacerbated by secondhand marijuana in my environment and the marijuana culture that was in my surroundings of Vashon Island. That could have been prevented had I gotten help, care, support, like a caregiver, medication, something, to treat my mental illness rather than make it worse with the whole marijuana push by the elites. I sought help to prevent that. Not one white liberal or white Jew on Vashon Island was honest enough to even admit that I had a mental illness, and that had it been treated, that could have been prevented. Had my mother been honest about the family history of schizophrenia, had my brother never forced marijuana on me, I could still have my left hand. The first incident could have been prevented. To this day, I still do not have help for my mental illness that's adequate enough to simply prevent involuntary exposure to secondhand marijuana from setting off my schizophrenia. Now, to me, that is a very simple and small request, but it's not that hard to accomplish. But somehow Americans, white Christians, etc., are just simply incapable of resisting the marijuana propaganda by the marijuana lobbyists and the cannabis industry. They're just mentally, genetically, who knows, whatever. They're incapable of simply saying no to drugs because of all the TikTok and the Instagram and the Snapchats, and etc. And so this made me realize that there is no perfect political or government system because of the human factor. Human nature. Capitalism, communism, Christian nationalism, all those things fail because humans. And here's where I really became aware of the human factor. So technically, that second charge never should have happened, because I should have had someone to step up and advocate for me and say, no, he clearly has a mental illness and a brain injury. At that time, I was struggling to form complete words and sentences, but libtards, white people, whatever, white Christians as well, just decided to pretend there was nothing wrong with me, even though there was clearly something wrong with me. So I'm going to highlight a couple cases that were different. Similar, but different. So right off the bat, and here's something Christians, white Christians specifically, seem incapable of resisting. I tried to look up this guy. This was a black guy who beat a white World War II veteran who fought and killed Nazis so the Jews could flood his country with porn and drugs and blacks, etc. He was beaten to death by a black guy. Now that guy was deemed incompetent to stand trial. He was declared schizophrenic and therefore not guilty. So how is it that he got the defense I didn't get, even though my schizophrenia was far more tangible and impossible to ignore or deny, but they still ignored and denied it on Vashon Island. Now, when I tried finding this, I got a whole bunch of pro-black stuff that was the exact opposite of what I searched for, right? I literally searched World War II veteran beaten to death by black, COVID lockdown, Wisconsin, and all I got was, the Jewing of the white Christian America through Google means we don't know what you're talking about, so here's a bunch of Black Lives Matter propaganda instead of showing that blacks are bad and kill white people for no reason. Now, this was cannabis-induced psychosis. This guy had schizophrenia and was smoking cannabis, so he literally committed homicide in cannabis-induced psychosis. Got no charges because the whole Black Lives Matter thing. The same with this woman, right? This woman's a very famous woman. Yeah. She is not like this, psycho black cannabis killer who's still out roaming around smoking cannabis and schizophrenic so he can kill more people. This could have been prevented simply by the government removing marijuana from society. It can do that. It literally, I guarantee the CIA, the FBI, etc., they know all the marijuana grow operations, distribution networks, etc., and they're just choosing not to do anything about it because it's serving the globalist agenda and the banks control all law enforcement. They're all corrupted and owned by money. This woman actually tried to get help for her mental illness and repeatedly was turned away and kicked out on the street. So she got the mental illness legal defense and she murdered a 3-year-old white kid. So how is it that these cases of psychosis, one I know for a fact is cannabis-induced psychosis. The other one I don't know for sure. Cannabis does cause homelessness, and this woman was homeless, so it's possible, but I don't know for sure, that marijuana caused her to go homeless and psychotic and murder a 3-year-old white kid just to get help for her mental illness. How is it they had the legal defense of mental illness, but I did not, even though I electrocuted myself and self-inflicted 3 amputations with 3 islands worth of electricity? The human factor. So this is the same message from white Christians that I get from white liberal atheists, and that is, you're not black, so your life doesn't matter. So the judges and all these advocates for these people of color, but not me, were simply brainwashed by Facebook, and the same drug and porn propaganda also flooded a lot of Black Lives Matter brainwashing propaganda, the blacking of Hollywood with the actors and actresses in movies, and so forth and so on, right? Very heavy-handed, like post-civil rights era propaganda that white Christians are too stupid to resist as well. It's pretty funny. But this means that companies like Google and Meta and Microsoft have more power over the government than the government does. Now, there's some good, solid conspiracy theories that I do believe that the CIA is behind Silicon Valley, that ex and current CIA agents move to Silicon Valley and work in tech and use tech to control the masses and are behind this exact outcome. The human factor makes it so if humans were moral, I never would have lost my left hand, and I never would have gotten those charges filed in the first place, a year after the crime happened. But even to this day, no white liberals, nor white Christians, no white Vashon Jews, etc., are going out of the way to advocate for me and say, hey, wait a minute, clearly he had schizophrenia. He's not fucking faking it. Clearly he had a brain injury as well. He wasn't faking that. We should fucking contact the judge, the county, whatever, and try to like expunge his record or, you know, have the charges reversed because this is a valid legal defense. And that's weird because I used to think that whites were better than Mexicans. And to an extent they kind of are, but apparently not. I'm not black, so Jesus says fuck you, right? I don't get the same level of, you know, decency and respect that blacks do because I wasn't enslaved, I think. Or my ancestors weren't slaves, so fuck me. It's pretty fucking retarded. And these are supposed to be intelligent people, but they're brainwashed by Facebook and smartphone technology. It's social engineering through social media. It's insane. And I also request the deep state, the Illuminati, whoever it is, that the software engineer manipulators that control what gets boosted and seen and what doesn't, that you kindly allow this second video to also get reach boosted the way the first one is, please. And actually give me what I pay for it, because I think I'm going to do the $22 premium plus just to get as much people to see this video as possible. And the way this serves your agenda is I can say all this stuff to the white Christians, to liberty students, etc., till I'm blue in the face. And it's weird. It's this weird effect that Christians have. The words leave my mouth, they enter their ears, and the brain is like trying to get a spark from a dead battery. Just and then I'm going to reject those facts and truths because I don't like them. They're not telling me what I want to hear. TikTok tells me what I want to hear. It's comforting lies instead of harsh truths. And as Christians, we need to lie for drugs. So, absolutely, this serves your agenda because it proves that white Christians, white atheists, liberals, conservatives, everyone is susceptible to propaganda. No one is immune to propaganda. And if anything, this is just a testament to the intelligence and effectiveness of the deep state, the corporate government, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the Epstein client list. Yeah. Because technically, this stuff should not have worked. Christians, had they followed the Bible, would not have been deceived and manipulated by these deep state tactics. So, yeah. It's funny to me that such simple tricks actually worked decades ago. This isn't even, oh, everyone thinks there's some sort of fight coming up. This war has been waging psychological warfare has been waged for almost a century now. Yeah, since like the 1930s, I think, is when propaganda and technology formed a union with the television and the broadcasting and the radio. So, yeah, it just blows my mind. Oh yeah, that raises another observation. So Cheech and Chong were Hispanics. That is mirror neuron manipulation. So many Hispanics saw those movies and thought, oh, they're like me. They're the same race, so I could trust them. Well, that's what Poop Dog and gangster rap was for blacks, right? It was drug and porn propaganda. So when I see what I now call the George Floyd effect, when I see blacks commit homicides in clearly cannabis-induced psychosis, that happened from profiling George Floyd based on his toxicology report. Toxicology report shows the presence of cannabinoids, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. THC as well, which is different than CBD, but both were present. So, odds are George Floyd began smoking cannabis at a very young age, maybe even 5 years old. This is a very common thing with the blacks. It's why there's a lot of crime and poverty among blacks. So this makes me think blacks were not psychologically capable of becoming aware and therefore resisting the drug and porn propaganda pushed through Hollywood, through Death Row Records and Dr. Dre and, all these pawns of the globalists, essentially, these chess pieces on a chessboard. The golem. And when I see the story of Jason Hayden, I can assume that black culture in Detroit specifically, influenced him to smoke cannabis, which caused him to go schizophrenic and murder that 88-year-old World War II vet by beating him to death on video, live streaming it. And you see this a lot. It's a black guy in California smoking weed, murdered 2 girls after raping them. One was 15 years old. Now, the government could have prevented all those things from happening by removing the cause, which is cannabis. Now, I'm not dishonest enough to say cannabis was the only cause, but it is clearly a primary causal component to all these homicides that are committed by people on cannabis. So if the government had the power to stop or prevent these things from happening and deliberately chose not to and still chooses not to, but instead their actions only increase these events happening with cannabis legalization as slaves to international banks, this means the government is behind the rise in crime and homicides and suicides. They are causing it with cannabis and other methods.